I don't play with lions. I don't play with those. I don't even do roller coasters. Wow.
Well, hello.
Welcome to the Young Turks. Lots of twists and turns in the Epstein case. It just does not end. So Cenk Ugranik is sparing with you guys. We got a variety of topics for you guys today, including near the end, we're going to talk about this couple who got caught cheating at the Coldplay concert. Hilarious video. I don't know if you guys have seen it yet. I have my theories, but my
allegedly,
of course. There's two hilarious twists in that story you might not have seen, but also check out our poll on tyt.com. I think you'll enjoy that one. All right, but anyway, that's later in the program. But in the meanwhile, we have Republicans who are frauds, and of course, corporate rule everywhere as far as the eye can see. All right, so let's do the news.
All right, well, a story that actually broke last night while we were live on air, but I wanted to kind of sit on it and wait until it developed further, is the firing of a fascinating figure within the Justice Department. Let's get into it.
Maureen Comey was for 10 years an extremely successful, dedicated, and ethical assistant US attorney in the Southern District of New York. She was a high-ranking person in that office. She became the head of the Public Integrity Unit. She supervised the case against Robert Menendez, the corrupt senator. She tried Ghislaine Maxwell. She tried P. Diddy. The idea that she got fired is a disgrace to the Justice Department. This is an outrage that this woman got fired.
As we all know, President Donald Trump is desperately trying to get Americans and his base in particular to drop the story about the Epstein files and the fact that the Trump administration reneged on its promise to release the Epstein files, which is why it's so strange that while he wants that to happen, the Trump administration has decided to fire a woman by the name of Maureen Comey, who happens to be the woman who prosecuted Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, Maureen Comey shares a name with James Comey because she actually happens to be his daughter. So that might have something to do with the firing, but I'm gonna give you all the details as we know them and you can decide for yourselves. Now, again, Comey is the daughter of Trump's main foe, biggest foe, and that's James Comey, and has worked for the US Attorney's Office for nearly a decade and prosecuted both Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. She's also the prosecutor in the Sean Diddy Combs case, which did not turn out the way that I suspected it would turn out. I mean, he ended up getting the most serious charges dropped and essentially just got convicted for paying for sex workers. But nonetheless, Comey was informed of her firing in a letter that cited Article 2 of the Constitution, which describes the powers of the president, according to two of the people who spoke to the New York Times about this. According to CNN, the reason for her firing remains unclear. It wasn't immediately clear. And there is something that we can maybe nibble on here. A person familiar with the situation said, being a Comey is untenable in this administration, given her father, James Comey, is, quote, constantly going after the administration, end quote. I don't think that's true. I don't think James Comey is constantly going after the Trump administration, but I do know that Trump absolutely despises him and probably felt uncomfortable with having his daughter serve in the Justice Department. Now, obviously questions are being raised about whether her involvement in the Epstein prosecutions was the real reason for her ouster. Now, just 2 days ago, Donald Trump claimed that the Epstein files, which by the way, earlier he said don't exist, were actually concocted by Obama and James Comey.
These files were made up by Comey. They were made up by Obama. They were made up by the Biden. We went through years of that with the Russia hoax, with all of the different things that we had to go through. We've gone through years of it.
Okay, so making this out to be a Democratic hoax is hilarious to me. And reporter Maggie Haberman was asked on CNN about what she thought about Comey's firing and what it's related to, whether it's related to the ongoing Epstein files scandal. And here's what she said.
It's hard to ignore the fact that she was involved in some of the cases involving Jeffrey Epstein. Time will tell whether this was the reason why, whether folks suggest that she had something to do with that. As you say, she apparently was not given a specific reason. And Article 2 was cited as, under the powers of Article 2 and the executive branch. She was dismissed. The president has obviously no love for James Comey, but this would, potentially feed into a line of what he is trying to allege is some broader effort that's separate from him.
So before we get to a statement that Maureen Dowd sent to her, I'm sorry. Wow, that was a weird reference. I don't know why Maureen Dowd came to mind. Maureen Comey, I meant to say. Before we get to the statement that she put out to her colleagues in regard to her firing, I just want to kind of skip ahead to this tidbit. This is Graphic 7. In 2017, the gossip site Radar Online sued the FBI in the Southern District under the Freedom of Information Act, of course, seeking the release of documents related to the Epstein files. Now, as I mentioned, Comey happened to be a prosecutor in that case, and she wanted to essentially suppress the release, right? So in a declaration submitted in that case in January of 2024, Comey wrote that releasing the documents could damage the government's case in a potential retrial of Miss Maxwell, including by subjecting witnesses to possible embarrassment and harassment that could make them less likely to testify. And ultimately, the judge overseeing the case sided with the FBI and agreed with that argument. So Comey has a history of trying to suppress the release of the Epstein files, which is why I really do call into question whether that was the real reason she was fired. But I mean, now that Ghislaine Maxwell has been convicted, maybe there was a possibility that she was open to releasing the Epstein files, and maybe Trump and the administration was concerned about that. Who knows? All we can do at this moment is speculate because there's been no reason given for her firing. What do you think, Cenk?
I think it's super clear. So first on Maureen Comey, well, there's two parts to her, right? So her not wanting to release the files, that drives me crazy because of this nonsense excuse they keep giving. It's such obvious horse crap about, we're worried about the victims and the witnesses. You never heard of a black marker? Nobody knows how to redact? Why do they keep saying that? It's the easiest thing in the world to redact. You really have to be stupid to fall for that. So, no one's ever heard of it before. I guess we'll just have to tell you the victims' names too. No, you don't. No, that's to protect the guilty. So the fact that she did that is troubling and it bothers me. But overall, her record is actually, and she lost the Diddy trial. But you think they're firing her because she lost the important parts of the Diddy trial? No. So why are they firing her? So here's the obvious part. Number one, she's actually the only one who has prosecuted Epstein and Maxwell. So if you're looking to cover up the crimes, you're kind of pissed at the one prosecutor in the country who actually prosecuted them. Number two, her last name is Comey. How did they get this lucky? So it's James Comey's daughter, so it's a perfect scapegoat. So they could then turn around to their base and go, see, the Comeys, told you. It's all fake, Russia, with James Comey, Epstein hoax with Maureen Comey, and they're hoping that it does two things. One is stop the bleeding, right? And just make sure you got something on the wound there, distract the part of your base that wants to believe you. Because obviously, look guys, we say, okay, we'd love for the Trump voters to flip. But would you, if you're a Democrat, would you have flipped to Trump within 6 months of Biden? I don't know any Democrats or very many Democrats that would have done that. Apparently Trump found enough by the end that did that, right? But so it's not like, so he's thinking, okay, I can close off most of the damage here. But then that leads to the next part, which is For the part of MAGA that really wanted accountability and really wanted to hold the establishment and the elites accountable, they're jettisoning you. So it's like one of those science fiction movies. They're up in space and they close the door and you can't get back in, and then they hit the eject button. You're off in outer space. So they've decided that they're going to move on without that part of the base. So, but for the guys, and by the way, that part of the base now, which is a trippy part that has like Marjorie Taylor Greene's got 1 foot in each base, Tucker Carlson's more on that side, Alex Jones weirdly is kind of on that, the one side being jettisoned, etc. Right? So for those guys, they're gonna hate every part of this. And now the fact that he's calling it no longer the Epstein files, but the Jeffrey Epstein hoax, is just rubbing it in their face. And it's like, hey, hand me some salt. I'm gonna pour it in their wounds. And if that wasn't enough, Anna, as you saw earlier today, Nancy Pelosi came out and said, Epstein's just a distraction. Basically, we should let Trump off the hook on this one.
Yeah,
really?
I mean, look, I was curious why Nancy Pelosi, of all people, would have that take, because when it comes to Donald Trump and his foibles, I mean, she loves to just constantly focus on them, emphasize them. I mean, it's a way in her mind of hurting Trump. So it's weird that in this moment, when you have pretty significant portion of his base turning on him, she's not taking advantage of this opportunity for political reasons. And so saying that it's a distraction is fascinating. I looked into it a little further. Look, she has a very friendly, close relationship with members of AIPAC. In fact, the former president of AIPAC is like her very close friend, and I think neighbor, if I'm not mistaken, but don't quote me on that. But they were close friends for 25 years. She has been on multiple interviews talking about her close, loving relationship with Israel. So maybe she's fearful that the release of the Epstein files would confirm some of our biggest fears, that it was all really just part of this big blackmail operation in order to essentially blackmail powerful politicians and various figures in this country to kind of play ball with the foreign policy that Israel wants. I don't know, but I don't see this as a distraction. I see this as an incredibly messy cover up, and yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens. But oh, sorry, there was something in my ear kind of distracting me, Cenk. But let me just say one other thing that might kind of reinforce what you're saying in regard to your speculation as to why Comey got fired. Trump's been in office for several months now. So why is she getting fired now? Why didn't she get fired right away? Especially during like this federal workers purge that took place at the beginning of his second term. I think the timing is a little suspicious.
Of course. It's not a legitimate firing. They're firing her to be a scapegoat. There's no question about that. And on Nancy Pelosi, look, we can speculate about a lot of different reasons why the government wants to cover up the Epstein files. But what is clear is this is the uniparty, the Democrats and the Republicans. They have both blocked the Epstein files for whatever reason. It might be as simple as Clinton and Trump are both on them, or it could be the other nefarious reasons. But either way, the government, both parties have decided there is no way in hell we are ever going to release these, right? So this is Nancy Pelosi helping Donald Trump. So because what that does, guys, if you're like on the left or the right, and you look at it and you go, oh, that actually confirms my suspicions, right? That doesn't make it less suspicious. That makes it more suspicious that this is the one time Nancy Pelosi's agreeing with Donald Trump, right? But for mainstream media, it's the exact opposite. Once Pelosi says move on, they're all gonna move on. And they've all started, now they've come back to calling anyone who believes that the list should be released and that Epstein was killed conspiracy theorists. And they're all now saying conspiracy theorists, like they're trying to jettison everyone in that camp and get the establishment firmly back in charge. Nothing to see here, guys. Hundreds of girls just raped themselves. There was no powerful politicians or rich people or anyone involved, but the US government has made a decision. They're gonna protect the guilty. And now, by the way, if you're a Democrat and you were going ha about Trump, which we were and I am to this day, because we've been consistent on it all along. And now it's your beloved Pelosi, and all of a sudden you can turn around and go, oh yeah, maybe it is a distraction, we should move on. No, then you're no better than the cultists, right? So
yeah. So, by the way, final thing that I'll add to all of this, it's kind of remarkable how many powerful people in government are just mask off about this whole situation. So former FBI Director Andrew McCabe says the Epstein files shouldn't be released because, quote, there isn't actually any public right to be able to see into sensitive FBI files.
Yeah.
Okay, so just straight up saying, we don't believe in transparency. We don't believe in letting the American people know what type of perverts run their government. I think that there's a deep public interest in knowing.
Wait,
okay,
Anna, who said that?
Jeffrey, former FBI Director Andrew McCabe said that.
Okay, see, there we go. Uniparty, totally coalescing, right? What do you mean we don't have a right to see it? Hundreds of underage girls were raped. We don't have a right to prosecute the people who did it. We don't have a right to find out who did it. We don't have a right to justice, says a guy who was in the Justice Department. See, Democrat, Republican does not matter. The government, the US government, for whatever reason, is obviously complicit. It's the most obvious thing I have ever seen.
So, Cenk, I promised it. So I want to just mention what Maureen Comey wrote to her colleagues in an email. She says, yesterday was unexpectedly my last day in the office. I was summarily fired via memo from Maine Justice that did not give a reason for my termination. If a career prosecutor can be fired without reason, fear may seep into the decisions of those who remain. Do not let that happen. Fear is the tool of a tyrant wielded to suppress independent thought. Instead of fear, let this moment fuel the fire that already burns at the heart of this place, a fire of righteous indignation at abuses of power, of commitment to seek justice for victims, of dedication to truth above all else. I have a different interpretation of what the Justice Department is.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I hear you. And so it's a nice statement. I don't know that any fire actually burns. I think that everybody's gonna be totally scared and do whatever Trump says. But okay, my last couple of things here are CNN ran a total BS poll from earlier saying, Trump's ratings are going up and Democrats' ratings are going down because of the Epstein files. They better not talk about the Epstein files anymore. Come on, guys. Like every part of this is so brazen and over the top. So here, let's as I always do, I'll do a prediction so you'll see if I'm right or wrong and see if I understand it well or maybe Harry Enten and CNN's got this figured out, right? My prediction is within a week or two, when you get a couple of real polls in, they won't be able to play games around the dates of the polls. And yes, Trump will have taken a significant downturn in the polls. If I'm wrong about that, okay, then by the way, I will recalibrate because that means that everyone online is not real, right? So maybe it didn't reach Kansas, maybe it didn't reach the middle of the country. We'll all find out together in a week or two. But my guess is no, his polls are going to be badly hurt. And so, and why, guys? He did it again today. This is the third or fourth time he's done it. He called his own supporters weaklings. Equated them to the radical left lunatics, and he said, quote, I don't want their support anymore. Who says that about their own voters? Actually, Democrats sometimes say that. Okay, so now I'm gonna give the last word to one of our members on YouTube, Simon Moody. And we love doing the show with you guys, so hit the join button below. Simon wrote in, a woman who has a track record of prosecuting rich and powerful men successfully. Yeah, why would Trump want her gone? I can't imagine. Okay, yet another good point.
All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about what is currently in the Senate appropriations bill that just passed. It's more about cutting funding to more things that would benefit ordinary people, but we'll get into those details. And we'll also talk about the tremendous amount of waste as it pertains to humanitarian aid that was in the possession of the United States. That and more coming up, don't miss it.
All right, back on TYT. Let's go to Super Chat. Donovan 8X says, Cenk, I saw you on Piers the other day. How the hell did you keep your composure with that rabbi and his dumb, smug face? I've gotten a tad bit calmer. Rabbi Shmuley and I have had a lot of brawls, but he was right in that segment. You know, after we debated at Oxford, we did shake hands and get along and stuff. Look, I get along with everyone, and so I know that some people criticize me for that. But does it look like I'm pulling any punches on air? No, and Rabbi Shmuley was surprised by the fact that I was not pulling any punches on air. But afterwards, yeah, I shake people's hands. That's what I do. So, look, at this point, even Shmuley is kind of, he's not even calling everyone an anti-Semite anymore. It's a huge leap forward. And I think that the reason for that is not because he was like, oh, you know what, maybe this isn't fair. I think he got to a point where he realized it's not working anymore. It's backfiring. So lots of interesting developments. And as you guys have seen, a lot of us that have gone on Piers Morgan's show have moved him. And he is now, significantly criticizing Israel, very significantly in that episode. And whenever I do an appearance, you can check it out on tyt.com/press. In that episode, he was talking to the godmother of the Israeli settlers, and he wouldn't let her off the hook at all. And then I called her, of course, what she is, a terrorist, because she advocates for killing Palestinian children. I mean, the settlers are totally, utterly out of control. So Piers asked her real quick, he said, Israel's killed 20,000 children. Do you at least say that that's a bad thing? He's like, well, they shouldn't have taught their children to hate us. Is it possible, first of all, that you're a monster and a terrorist? But secondly, that they might hate you because you killed 20,000 of their children? Come on, I mean, what's circular logic? I had to murder their children so they wouldn't hate me. What? Okay, so lunatics.
I'm sorry, but Cenk, I mean, look, one of the trends that's emerged on social media during this horrible genocide are all sorts of videos of, Israeli civilians mocking the deaths and the slaughter of Palestinians. And I would never in a million years advocate for them to be targets, for them to be slaughtered. Okay, as abhorrent as I find those videos and as much as they disgust me, civilians are civilians and they should be protected. And I'm talking about adults in this case. I mean, think about children. That's what this woman, Daniela Weiss is her name, was asked about. And she just doesn't see these Palestinian children as human at all. It's crazy.
It's disgusting. Okay, let's go to YouTube members. Dana Albrecht says, Jeffrey's brother, Mark Epstein, has done some very interesting interviews. Yeah, Kate, let's write that one down, see if we can get him on. Chaz Reborn says, they know old Billy is guilty AF. Well, that's probably also true. Trisha Briggs says, happy Thursday, 5 p.m. live show is always my favorite part of the day, especially Cenk's justifiable rage. Thank you both, Cenk and Anna. Thank you, Trisha, appreciate it. Moving Death says, watching Trump is like playing hide and go seek with a toddler. We can still see you, Trump, behind that hand makeup. Allison Alt says, Anna and Cenk looking good. Thank you. Brenda Jones says, Cenk and Anna, yes, right back at you, Queen. Casey says, I can't wait for Republicans to get their asses handed to them in the midterms. You speak for America. Redmond Barry 1975 on Twitch says, if Bannon and Boebert are suspicious, there must be something there. Yeah, I mean, even they're calling out Trump. Back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, Stephen Meyer, and TJ Grusevsky. Stephen and TJ, you guys are making heroes. We really appreciate it. Thanks for hitting that join button below. And if you sign up there or at tyt.com/join, you get all of our content. Anytime you want, you get the old school episodes when they're live. We curse and all that. Bonus episodes when they're live. Fun for everybody. So great time to become a member. All right, Casper.
All right, well, let's talk a little bit about what just happened in the Senate. It's not getting a lot of attention because of the Epstein scandal, but I think it's worth knowing about. Yesterday, Republican Senator Tom Tillis slammed President Donald Trump for pushing a bill that would essentially defund both public broadcasting and foreign aid programs. Now, he was already basically planning to retire. He's not going to be seeking re-election. So he doesn't have to worry about losing re-election for criticizing Donald Trump, which is why it's super weird that Tillis voted for the bill anyway, allowing it to pass in the Senate 51-48. Now, Tillis supposedly didn't like the legislation because the White House used what's known as a rescissions bill. Now, if you've never heard about that, I don't blame you. I actually hadn't heard about that because a rescissions bill hasn't really been an issue since the 1990s. Now, what is it? Well, it's a push for about $9 billion in spending cuts, and that spending was already approved by Congress earlier this year. So understand what I'm saying. Congress approves funding for these programs, and a rescissions bill essentially cuts that previously appropriated money from those programs. Congress, by the way, is obviously notoriously protective over its constitutional control over federal funding. That's why they're known to hold the power of the purse. And the rescissions bill rarely gets passed, or a rescissions bill rarely gets passed, because it's essentially handing that power over to the White House. So the last time a rescissions bill was passed was all the way back in 1999 under President Bill Clinton. Now, Tillis was upset because the White House failed to provide specific details for what exactly would get cut. There's a lack of specificity. So, the Trump White House, of course, has called for a cut to public broadcasting, called for cuts to foreign aid programs. But how much are we talking about? Where are the cuts going to hurt the most? We don't know the details, and neither does the Senate, but they passed the bill anyway. Tillis states that conservatives, particularly, I find it remarkable just how open we are to not demanding the details before we vote. Well, Tillis, you don't know the details before you voted, and you voted yes. So who are you to talk? But let me continue. He also says, but I'm not going to hold it up because of the relatively small size of it. But I think going forward, it would be virtually impossible to get another rescission package done at any scale if they don't do their homework. Now, from what is being reported at the moment, the bill cuts about $1.1 billion from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. And that's the very entity that provides the funding for, partially the funding for NPR and PBS. People think that NPR and PBS are like wholly funded through taxpayer dollars. That's not the case, which is why both organizations are still expected to survive despite the cuts. However, these two organizations then send money to local stations, and some of those local stations, require 50% of their funding to come from public money. And so those local stations might not survive. Now, many public broadcasters, again, receive more than 50% of their budgets from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Senator Bernie Sanders accused Trump of targeting journalism, writing that Trump, like all authoritarians, doesn't like criticism or objective reporting. He just wants to be flattered. That's why he wants to defund NPR and PBS. If democracy is to survive, we need a strong independent media. I will vote to support public broadcasting. Now, look, in previous stories that we've covered, previous videos that we've done, we've called out organizations like NPR where we feel that they didn't do adequate reporting or they didn't do a good job. They're not perfect, okay? Just like any other news organization, they make mistakes or biases seep into their reporting. But to target these organizations, I think is really politically motivated more than anything else. So I mostly agree with what Bernie Sanders is saying there. Now, the rest of the cuts are directed at foreign aid, but again, the details are pretty unclear. Senator Susan Collins, who's considered one of the more moderate Republicans, actually voted against the bill and stated that the rescissions package has a big problem. No one really knows what program reductions are in it. For example, there are $2.5 billion in cuts to the development assistance account, which covers everything from basic education to water and sanitation, to food security, all things that the Trump administration has shown that they don't really care much about. But she continues saying, but we don't know how those programs will be affected. And even Senator Mitch McConnell, who voted for the bill, complained about this, saying, I want to make it clear, I don't have any problem with reducing spending. We're talking about not knowing. They would like a blank check is what they would like. And I don't think that's appropriate. I think they ought to make the case. Well, they didn't make the case and you voted for the bill. Like, what is this? If I say something, so Cenk, if I say, no, I have a problem with covering this story, the story hasn't developed enough. We don't have all the details. It would be irresponsible to cover it. I would be ridiculous to then immediately cover the story right after I complain about it. It's just insane, but go ahead.
So that goes to the core of the issue, guys. What do we tell you? We tell you ahead of time. All of them pass. Oh, look at that. It's taking money away from things that are positive, like humanitarian aid, boo, PBS, NPR, etc. And so what are they gonna do? Oh, 51-48. Oh no, Susan Collins and Murkowski voted no. Tillerson and McConnell had objections. Now don't hold it against the Republicans. No, I definitely hold it against the Republicans. It's always going to be, oh look, they just had enough votes. 51 almost every time, right? Oh, now Murkowski and Collins, you guys can now go pretend to be moderates back in your home states as we pass every single bill and play these nonsense games, right? So, okay, now what did they do? They took $9 billion out. Remember the package they just passed, mainly tax cuts for corporations and the wealthy, added $4 trillion to the debt. Do you know what 4 trillion minus 9 billion is? 4 trillion. It's not gonna make a dent. It's not even gonna come close to making a dent. So what's the point of this? It's gratuitous. And plus, by the way, they say, well, look, we took away the stupid humanitarian aid. We had no more Mr. Nice Guy. America says, okay, yeah, we'll still do war. We'll still bomb Iran, okay? But we won't do any of the positive stuff we were doing. That'll show the world. And on top of that, all the foreign aid is cut except for, you all know, right? I mean, this is now comical. I don't even have to say it. So of course, except for Israel, but also Egypt and Jordan. Why? Because they have a peace deal with Israel and they're allies with Israel. By the way, I like that they have a peace deal. I like that they're rewarded for that peace deal. But it is like over the top. They're like, that's it, no more money for anyone. Well, obviously, everything to Israel and their allies, but we mean the rest of the world we have no interest in. Only Israel. Come on, guys.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. Look, it's essentially paying off Israel's neighbors to keep it cool.
Yeah,
okay.
That's right.
Don't have an
but that's not a bad thing. I want peace in the region, right?
No, that's fine. That's fine. But again, it kind of goes to show you what our government's priorities are. And by the way, it also creates a situation in which, as we know, Israel is free to bomb all of its neighbors with impunity.
Yeah, because nobody fights back, right? And so, and look, I don't want anybody fighting, but they just drop bombs on Damascus anytime they want. They're threatening to drop bombs on Tehran again. They drop bombs on Lebanon anytime they want, but they're not the aggressors. No, your eyes are lying to you, your ears are lying to you, et cetera. Last thing, they say, oh my God, rescission, and this is a power of Congress and we won't give it away. Trump has it right away. They give it away. And the only positive out of this whole thing is, at least it wasn't like unconstitutional. Because sometimes what Trump does, a lot of times what he does with executive orders is, well, that's it, I'm not paying that anymore, even though Congress authorized it, right? You don't have that option. So at least they went back for a congressional vote, got the congressional vote. We might not like the result, but at least that part of it was done right. Fair show in America.
Well, let's move on to something entirely different because there's a senator that I've soured on, Cenk. I mean, it's not like I was a huge fan of his anyway, but he really positioned himself in a favorable way, and I would give him props here and there. Lately, I've been regretting that, and I want you to tell me whether I was wrong in supporting some of what he was doing in the Senate. So without further ado, let's get to the next story. Republican Senator Josh Hawley, who really fancies himself as a hero of working class Americans, voted for President Donald Trump's massive omnibus bill, which of course gives huge tax breaks that disproportionately benefit the rich, while also cutting funding to programs like Medicaid and food assistance for the poor. But recently, Hawley introduced a bill that would reverse some of those Medicaid cuts, probably knowing full well that there isn't a chance in hell that that bill would pass. So is this a PR stunt or is he real about passing this legislation? That's the question I want you to ask yourselves as I give you more details. So in order to understand how Hawley flip-flopped on this issue, allegedly, we need to get into this Medicaid provider tax. So bear with me, I know it can get a little complicated. Medicaid is jointly funded by the federal government and states. Remember, Medicaid is run by the states, but it's partially funded by the federal government. States cover the upfront cost of care and then are reimbursed by the federal government for at least 50%. The provider tax is a state-imposed fee on hospitals and other healthcare providers to help fund the state's share of the Medicaid program. So every single state except for Alaska has at least one provider tax. But Trump's budget bill changes how provider taxes can be implemented. So the bill freezes the current provider tax thresholds for all states for 2 years. This is a disaster, by the way, and reduces the allowable level of provider taxes for expansion states by 0.5% each year until it reaches 3.5% in fiscal year 2032. So, oftentimes, and this drives me nuts, when these debates take place about the work requirements, most Americans, I think, not most Americans, but there's a portion of American voters who think yeah, you should, if you're able-bodied, you should be working. You shouldn't be living off government cheese. But the cuts to Medicaid went much deeper than work requirements. And this is exactly what I'm referring to when I talk about, this whole provider tax situation that was baked into the omnibus bill. Now, expansion states refer to states, by the way, that adopted the Affordable Care Act, which expanded the amount of Americans that can qualify for Medicaid and also provided additional federal dollars to states to run their Medicaid programs. Now, Hawley's bill would undo the provider tax moratorium and reduction that was baked into Trump's omnibus bill. Furthermore, Trump's budget includes a rural health transformation fund, thanks to Hawley's efforts, and Hawley's new bill would double its funding from $50 to $100 billion and also extend its lifespan from 5 years to 10 years. Now, I'm gonna get to Hawley's messaging about why he voted for the bill and why he's proposing this legislation now. But before I do, Cenk, what are your thoughts so far?
Okay, look, I gave Hawley a little bit of a chance like you did because he stopped taking corporate PAC money, right? So, and then he introduced some piece of legislation that were actually a little bit populist, and he became a little bit more of an interesting person than the standard corporate robots in Congress. But at the end of the day, he's still a Republican. So what did he do? He cut Medicaid and then did a lot of theatrics around it. Before he cut Medicaid, he's like, I'm really against cutting Medicaid. Now, after cutting Medicaid, you know what he's saying? I'm really against cutting Medicaid. Brother, you already voted. The ship's already sailed, right? So don't tell me you're against cutting Medicaid when you affirmatively voted to butcher Medicaid, butcher it, right? So now you want to bring back a portion of it in this bill. All right, I'll go back, because we're fair, I'll go back to giving you not full credit, but partial credit if you get it passed. If you convince enough Republicans and Democrats to pass the bill. If you don't pass the bill, you get zero credit. Then it's just an advertising campaign. Oh, I'm gonna screw you over, I'm gonna stab you in the back, but I want you to pretend that I'm a populist. No, right now, Josh Hawley has zero credit.
Agreed, and look, at the moment, he could prove me wrong, but at the moment, I do regret ever giving him credit. I think he's full of crap. I think this is a PR stunt. Now, Hawley published a piece, an opinion piece in the New York Times saying, don't cut Medicaid.
What a joke, you already cut it.
Yeah, you voted for it, okay? In it, I'm gonna read a few excerpts from what he claims. He says, a noisy contingent of corporatist Republicans, call it the party's Wall Street wing, wants Republicans to build our big, beautiful bill around slashing health insurance for the working poor. But that argument is both morally wrong and politically suicidal, which is why I voted for it. Okay, there's more. If Congress cuts funding for Medicaid benefits, Missouri workers and their children will lose their health care and hospitals will close. It's that simple. And that pattern will be replicated in states across the country. Yes, we know, Senator Hawley. People like us have been reporting on that. And in fact, there have been other senators who were worried about the political ramifications of voting yes on this bill, and they voted yes anyway. And I would venture to say he happens to be one of them. Now, Trump himself, he writes, has been crystal clear on this point. Since taking office, he has repeatedly rejected calls for Medicaid benefit cuts. Okay, so now we're doing, we're running interference, running cover for Donald Trump here, because obviously he was lying. He wanted the bill to pass, and he wanted to justify the tax cuts by saying that it's partially paid for, which it isn't, by the way, it's barely paid for. A little fraction of it was paid for by cutting Medicaid to the tune of $1.1 trillion. In the end, this bill is gonna add $3.4 trillion to our already insanely high $37 trillion in federal debt. Again, Hawley voted yes on this. Just the other week, he writes, Trump said, we are doing absolutely nothing to hurt Medicare, Medicaid, or Social Security, nothing at all. Which is a lie, Josh Hawley, and you know that. In June, Hawley stated, quote, this has been an unhappy episode here in Congress, this effort to cut Medicaid. And I think, frankly, my party needs to do some soul searching. If you want to be a working class party, you've got to deliver for working class people. You cannot take away healthcare from working people. And unless this is changed going forward, that is what will happen in coming years. So I'm going to do everything I can to stop that.
Except vote for
exactly. Look, he knows this bill is going nowhere. He knows it. Republicans are not going to be willing to cross their daddy, Donald Trump, in Congress specifically. These politicians are pathetic. They're cowards. All they care about is themselves, their donors. So he knows once you pass that omnibus bill, you're not going to be able to reverse the damage. And I'm going to go even further. If the next administration happens to be a Democratic administration, I'm willing to bet that they won't reverse the Medicaid cuts. And the reason why I'm saying that is just based on their behavior in previous administrations. I mean, Biden made all these promises about reversing some of the damage of Trump's 2017 tax cuts. He did nothing to push for the passage of those provisions in legislation at all. Oh, I'm gonna raise the corporate tax rate from 21% to 28%. Okay, but Trump cut the corporate tax rate from 35% to 21%. So why is your starting bid 28%? Look, I know that some people get real touchy when they hear people like us refer to our current political landscape as a uniparty. But just pay close attention to what their priorities are. Pay attention to what their promises are when they're running and what they actually do when they're voted into power.
Yeah, I don't care if people get touchy. Yeah. Oh, after they took out the Green New Deal part, the Republicans did from Biden's bills, he passed nothing that was progressive. Nothing. You've been had, you've been took if you're a Democrat. And if you're a Republican and you like Josh Hawley and thought he was a populist, you've been had, you've been took. These guys always give to their donors, not complicated at all. Look, I'm gonna read one member here, Beverly on TYT.com, said, Hawley worked with Bernie on some legislation in the past. I had some hope for him too, Anna. You're not alone. This super smart audience we have paying attention to all this, he did. He seemed to be co-sponsoring some positive bills. That's why we gave him credit, and that makes sense, because at the time he was doing the right thing on those particular issues, right? We didn't say, okay, you should trust Hawley from now on. We never say that, right? And why? Because we know things like this are gonna happen. And so, first of all, by the way, be a member at tyt.com/join and you'll be part of the show. Okay, so now Hawley says, it's the Wall Street wing that wants to cut Medicaid. So he cut Medicaid, so I guess Hawley's in the Wall Street wing. That's his language, right? And that editorial was written before they voted on it. So all this tough guy talk and a big splashy New York Times editorial, I'm fighting for Medicaid. And he's like, and our party has to do some soul searching. And then he does every single terrible thing he said the Republican Party was going to do. Well then, brother, I guess you should do some soul searching, right?
So look, but I also want to be fair, Cenk, because look, I wouldn't say every single. Okay, there have been specific examples in which he actually went against the Republican Party in his vote. So let me just give you a sense of what he did in regard to medical debt.
Before you do,
yeah,
I meant in this budget. So in this tax bill that they passed, but go ahead.
Okay, so if you guys can remember, there was something wonderful that was done under Biden in specifically the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, right? So last week, unfortunately, this makes me so angry. A federal judge vacated a rule that would have kept Americans' unpaid medical debt off of their credit reports. Because we have a broken healthcare system and you have no choice but to get the healthcare you need if you're sick, okay? And for that to hurt you economically, financially, is just unfair. So that was basically a way of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau to protect Americans and their credit reports. Well, the federal judge, again, vacated that rule, and it would have impacted the credit scores of 15 million Americans, okay? So those with medical debt on their credit reports could have received a 20-point boost on average in their credit score, the Bureau said when issuing the rule back in January. Also, the rule was expected to lead to the approval of about 22,000 additional mortgages every year. Now, in fairness to Hawley, the Senate tried to overturn that rule back in March, and Hawley opposed that effort and did vote against it. So that was a good vote for Hawley. But unfortunately, in the end, it made its way through the courts, and a federal judge struck the rule down.
Yeah, so last two comments here. Again, back to our audience, smartest audience in the country. Police the White House writes in on TYT.com. Hawley's facing blowback in his own district. He's proposing this bill because he wants to whitewash his image, knowing full well that it has no chance of passing. I think that right there is the whole story in a nutshell. I think you're exactly right. And finally, even if they add some stuff back, okay, so remember all they're talking about, like, oh, we're gonna get the debt under control, these Democrats, oh, they run up the debt, right? So there's different estimates. Congressional Budget Office has one, other journalism organizations have one, but 3.4 is the lowest I've seen. I've seen as high as $4 trillion. So let's give them the conservative one. So you added 3.4 trillion to the debt. Now, if this bill passes, I'm in favor of it, but it would add more to the debt. So where's the part where you control the debt? I told you, we told you from day one. We've seen this movie 100 times. They don't care about the debt at all. Their only priority is tax cuts. And that's what they did again. That's what they did the first time with Donald Trump. That's what they did with George W. Bush. That's what they did with Ronald Reagan. All the Republican Party ever does is tax cuts for their donors.
Yep. All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, Cenk, a story broke that it's gonna make your head is gonna explode. So hold, we're gonna take a break. When we come back, I'm gonna give you all the details.
All right, back on TYT. Let's start a YouTube member section again. Jonathan Borzani says, NPR is definitely biased. I listen a lot, but they had a debate between a Bernie and Warren supporter, and both agreed that Bernie is an extreme sexist. It was a total hit job on Bernie. I've seen NPR do, like, I barely ever listen to it. This is only from like stuff that I randomly heard or made it on the internet or some in one way or shape or another. Every single NPR story is biased against Bernie. Like, it's again, only the ones I've seen, right? And maybe it's a selected group, right? But still, would I cut NPR's budget and PBS's? No, that is the very last priority, even if you are unhappy with their coverage. James Anthony says, I live in a rural red state. PBS and NPR have programming for ag listeners that mainstream media won't, as it's too small a market. And that's one of the reasons why I wouldn't cut it, James. And that's a great point. And by the way, unfortunately, those stations are going to get hurt the most. PBS and NPR are not going to close down, but a lot of the smaller local stations that they ran are going to close down. Some think maybe as many as 50%. So great point by James. Jonathan wrote in earlier as well, at least the GOP will lose a bunch of seats in the midterm. I never count out Democratic incompetence, but they'd have to outdo themselves, like run on a war/trans in sports and save the GOP ticket again, right? Yeah, look, never underestimate Democrats' ability to clown an election, but if I'm right, I think an enormous number of Republican voters or Trump voters are gonna stay home during the midterms. John Owen says, I'm surprised Trump hasn't blamed Al Gore for inventing the internet. Wait for it. On Twitch, Semperfire Dog says, 65 months since TYT started on Twitch, and I love every second of it. Cenk is my spirit animal. Keep on fighting the good fight with your ferocity and passion. Well, you're awesome, Semperfire Dog. I appreciate you. Cenk's left tricep of fury, says Hawley playing both sides. He's in the right job. This is now TYT.com. Teddy Lucy Linda says, stay tuned. Well, this is the story where I think we're going to share with you in a minute. The Wall Street Journal is about to blow the lid off the Epstein files. Ooh, drama. We have some details on that coming up in a couple of minutes. Jorv Jam Bongino says, and only months ago I recall Trump saying something about being the most transparent administration ever. Well, I suppose in a way they are. They're transparently obvious in all that they're doing. Cover up the Epstein list. Give tax cuts for our donors. Transparent.
That's what I do.
Tattered Remnant writes in, Pelosi's proving the point that both parties are protecting their rich and powerful friends and probably protecting members of their own parties too. Well, that's the leading theory, and that makes sense, and that's almost certainly true. The only question is if there are extra layers to it. Police the White House says it's super obvious that Trump is just accusing his enemies of fabricating the facts that reflect negatively on Trump. Surely his supporters must see it by now. He's done this time and time again. Is the stunt ever going to wear thin? Well, you're right. I think he crossed the Rubicon, but we're going to find out. Is there a Rubicon, or are they going to go back to him? I'm very curious to find out. Cenk's left tricep fury also wrote in, exactly, Cenk. Release the files with the victims' names redacted, easy peasy. Engineer wrote in, if the files were created by Obama, then why didn't Trump destroy them in his first administration? Nothing he says makes sense. That is exactly right. Because he doesn't bother thinking it through. And one day everybody's going to go, you know what? I think Cenk might have been right that Trump's a moron. Okay. Skeptic Saturn Dragon says, concerning Tuesday's old school episode, no matter at what age, with or without permission, when Cenk's daughter back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, Ann Arnold, Ryan Sum, and Pro Patrick, and Pro wrote in, I'm back, got the membership as my birthday gift to myself, that's awesome, and you have the same name, first name as my son, so that's awesome. Last quick thing before we get to the breaking news, I was reading Skeptic Saturn Dragon's comment during the break, I got cut off. They're a member on TYT.com. They said, when Cenk's daughter takes his car, at some point, it's a reference to an old school conversation we had, it's gonna be a joyride. Hey, you can't get wah to the members. I like that dad joke.
Stop, just please stop.
It was good because it was true. I like that, I like that.
Okay, now breaking news.
All right, buckle up, strap in. This one is quite a doozy. So, the Wall Street Journal has just published a piece detailing a bit of President Donald Trump's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. I'm going to give you the details as they're reported in just a moment. But prior to the Wall Street Journal publishing this piece, according to Oliver Darcy on his Substack, Donald Trump personally called the editor-in-chief of the Wall Street Journal to try to get the paper to spike the story. He didn't want them reporting on it. I'm going to read you verbatim what Darcy wrote. According to people familiar with the matter, the Journal is facing pressure from the White House over the story. In fact, Trump is said to have personally called Emma Tucker, the Journal's editor-in-chief, to voice his objections. The specifics of the call remain unclear, but it's hard to imagine Trump voiced anything but outrage. It's unclear whether Trump reached out to Rupert Murdoch, whose News Corporation owns the Wall Street Journal. So Darcy then, according to Mediaite, went on to say that the details of the story are unclear, but that it nonetheless is said to contain new material about the relationship between Trump and Epstein. Now, I don't know if this is the big story that the Wall Street Journal just published, but we have learned some new details about Trump's relationship with Epstein, namely that Trump basically wrote him a letter in celebration of Epstein's 50th birthday. Now I'm gonna read from the Wall Street Journal piece, where they write that the letter bearing Trump's name, which was reviewed by the Journal, is bawdy, like others in the album. It contains several lines of typewritten text framed by the outline of a naked woman, which appears to be hand-drawn with a heavy marker. A pair of small arcs denotes the woman's breasts, and the future president's signature is a squiggly Donald below her waist, mimicking pubic hair. The letter concludes, quote, "Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret."
Ooh, I was wondering how it was gonna end because it just broke. So I'm hearing it with you guys. So look, Donald Trump trying to intimidate the press and calling them to get them to not run the story. That's Trump 101. By the way, the guy who ran on free speech. Just note that for the record. Yeah. So then in terms of the story itself, guys, look, we've known that Trump and Epstein were friends for at least 15 years. How do we know that? Trump said it. He said they were, quote, terrific friends. And he said that he has a reputation for liking women. He said on the younger side. And then now we see this where he signed a birthday card saying every day is a wonderful secret. Well, apparently not so wonderful today for Donald Trump as one of those secrets is revealed. So if you had any kind of illusion that Donald Trump and Epstein were not really close friends, you're totally wrong. They partied together. That's why there's like dozens of pictures of them together. And also Ghislaine Maxwell. And when she was arrested, Trump was president, and they asked her they asked Trump about her, and two different instances. He said, "Oh, I wish her well. You wish the biggest groomer in American history well." And they're like, "Mr. President, you said that, you probably didn't mean it." Second time, he's like, "Oh, no, I meant it. I wish her well." Well, she's the one who collected that letter from Trump to give to their mutual friend Epstein.
So to Nancy Pelosi, who believes that the Epstein scandal and the broken promises on releasing the Epstein files is nothing more than a distraction. Does she still think that? And former FBI Director Andrew McCabe doesn't think that the release of the Epstein files is in the public's interest. That we don't have the right to these FBI documents. Unbelievable. By the way, the Wall Street Journal acknowledged that they had a conversation with Donald Trump. Trump denied writing the letter or drawing the picture. Quote, "This is not me. This is a fake thing. It's a fake Wall Street Journal story. I never wrote a picture in my life. I don't draw pictures of women. It's not my language. It's not my words." And then he told the Journal he was preparing to file a lawsuit if they published the article. Quote, "I'm gonna sue the Wall Street Journal just like I sued everyone else," he said. Wow.
Yeah, so everyone's aware that if you write any piece about Donald Trump, he's a whiny toddler, and he's gonna try to sue you. I mean, what is with the politicians suing people for criticizing them? Is this still a free country? Is this still America? "Oh, you criticize me, I'm a politician. You shouldn't be allowed to criticize me in America, where we have freedom of speech, freedom of the press. I'm gonna sue you and try to get money from you." But the Wall Street Journal is owned by Rupert Murdoch. Murdoch didn't make that decision without knowing that Trump is gonna try to sue and fight back, etc. So that's Murdoch saying, "Have at it, Hoss. Let's see how it turns out for you."
Now, this was apparently some sort of like album where his friends and associates were writing him happy birthday wishes. And according to the Wall Street Journal's reporting, among those who submitted letters were billionaire Leslie Wexner. His name comes up quite a bit, by the way, and attorney Alan Dershowitz. The album also contained a letter from a now deceased Harvard economist, one of Epstein's report cards from Mark Twain Junior High School in Brooklyn, and a note from a former assistant that included this message: "Jeffrey, oh Jeffrey, everyone loves you. Fun in the sun, fun just for fun. Remember, don't forget me soon. Epstein, you rock, you are the best." And Epstein was Wexner's money manager at the time. And he is the longtime leader of, oh God, so sad, Victoria's Secret. And he wrote a short message saying, "I wanted to get you what you want, so here it is. after the text was a line drawing of what appeared to be a woman's breasts.
They all knew. Okay, Les Wexner, in case you're wondering, this is something that a lot of people have reported on. Tara Palmieri was on the show. You should check out that interview on YouTube. And she reported on it for a lot of major publications. So he's very wealthy. He runs a company that has not just Victoria's Secret, but I think other well-known brands. So that's not the interesting part. The interesting part is, so if you don't know, Epstein didn't graduate college, has no background in finance, was a high school math teacher, and then got fired. Gee, I wonder why he got hired from a high school job. And then one person before Wexner gave him this amazing job at Bear Stearns. And so you could say, hey, look, maybe he learned finance there. I don't know why in the world he would give this fired math teacher this amazing job at Bear Stearns. Okay, fine. But Wexner does the really weird thing where he then comes in and says, why don't you manage all my money for me? And hands his money to Epstein with complete trust to manage an enormous amount of money. That was super weird, right? So now Wexner, take this for what it's worth, and this is, again, the reporting from major publications, right? Is an enormous AIPAC donor, and so, but a lot of people are, right? That doesn't make them guilty, right? It's just people are saying, well, okay, that's a weird, interesting thing he did. I wonder why he did that. And by the way, Epstein ripped off other people who were Jewish Americans, etc. So he's ripping everybody off. So that's why it's so complicated. We don't know, did he have something on Wexner or did Wexner help him? Who knows? So you know what would be great if the people who knew inside the Justice Department, inside this administration, told us, because they know, they definitely know. The only people who don't know are the American people, and no one ever got prosecuted.
Okay, a few more details. This story is actually pretty explosive. So there's more on what Trump wrote in his letter to Epstein. So as I mentioned, it was a hand-drawn, figure of a woman. And inside the outline of the naked woman was a typewritten note styled as an imaginary conversation between Donald Trump and Epstein, written in third person. So I'm just gonna give you the imaginary back and forth, right? Voiceover. There must be more to life than having everything, the note began. Donald says, yes, there is, but I won't tell you what it is. Jeffrey responds, nor will I, since I also know what it is. Then Donald says, we have certain things in common, Jeffrey. Jeffrey says, yes, we do, come to think of it. Donald says, enigmas never age. Have you noticed that? Jeffrey says, as a matter of fact, it was clear to me the last time I saw you. And then it ends with Trump saying, a pal is a wonderful thing. Happy birthday. And may every day be another wonderful secret. So that was the full context. And then I think what Dershowitz wrote is also relevant. But before I get to that, any comment on the full context of what Trump allegedly wrote in this letter to Epstein?
You'd have to be the blindest person in America not to see that there's something up, right? I mean, they're writing back in 2003 to one another, snickering about their wonderful secrets and their enigmas and how great of pals they are. And you remember the secret thing we did last time we were together. I mean, it doesn't take a Navajo code breaker to figure that out.
Now, Dershowitz's letter included a mock-up of a Vanity Unfair magazine cover with mock headlines such as, who was Jack the Ripper? Was it Jeffrey Epstein? And then he joked in the letter that he had convinced the magazine to change the focus of an article from Epstein to Bill Clinton. Good job. Good job. By the way, Bill Clinton obviously had ties to Jeffrey Epstein. I don't have a problem with having conversations about Bill Clinton and his association with Epstein at all. But to brag about taking the heat off Epstein and instead, transferring it on to other people, it's interesting considering what Epstein was up to, right? Now, obviously Dershowitz was Epstein's lawyer. He actually represented Epstein. But his whole argument is, well, that's what lawyers do. That's the whole point of our, justice system. Everyone deserves a chance at defending themselves. But clearly their relationship was much closer than, this legal counsel and client relationship that Dershowitz tries to make it out to be in his public interviews.
Yeah, no, Dershowitz is an interesting cat in this regard. I mean, he has said on tape, I know that there are clients and I know who they are, but because of confidentiality reasons, I can't tell you. So, okay, so the Trump administration is clearly lying, but everybody knows that. Like what, there were no clients? There were no clients? Come on, who's dumb enough to believe that? Seriously, if you're dumb enough to believe that, if you're a Trump supporter or a Pelosi supporter or Bill Clinton supporter, and you go, oh no, I think the girls raped themselves. Okay, I mean, why don't you just hang a sign around your neck saying I'm a moron? But by the way, I mean, look, Wall Street Journal, great job here, but all of mainstream media is still posing all of this as conspiracy theories, that he might have had clients and he might have been connected to this or that. Oh, these are all conspiracy. No, he had clients. Yeah, there was a conspiracy, the one that he ran, right? I mean, this is insanity, right? So for Dershowitz, he's both Epstein's lawyer at one point and Trump's lawyer at one point. There's another lawyer who was both Epstein's lawyer and Trump's lawyer at one point. So, but I think that overall, Anna, this gives more weight to the people who say it's not an intelligence agency or anything like that. It's just Trump is connected to Epstein and Clinton was connected to Epstein and the powerful people are connected to Epstein. So that's probably the explanation, and that's why both sides have kept it secret. So yeah, I think it is evidence in that regard.
No, I think both things can be true at the same time. Absolutely, right? Epstein could have been part of this blackmail operation or blackmail scheme. Why would Alex Acosta, who was prosecuting Epstein and eventually decided to give him a sweetheart deal, say publicly, and even till this day refused to deny, that he was told Epstein is intelligence, back off?
Yeah, to be fair, he didn't say it publicly, but when asked publicly, he refused to deny it. Right?
Exactly.
And the thing that I keep pointing out, I don't know why no one else cares about it, but like Acosta's a random prosecutor down in Florida, right? At the federal level, but still. And Trump makes him labor secretary. Why is he becoming labor secretary out of nowhere? So there's so many amazing connections, and some of them might mean nothing. My favorite one that's got to mean nothing. I can't imagine that there's a connection, but the person who hired Epstein to be the math teacher down in Florida was Bill Barr's dad. Attorney General Bill Barr for Donald Trump. His dad hired Epstein. He was the very first guy to hire Epstein, at least as a math teacher. So sometimes the connections are just coincidence, right? But in this case, there's a lot of coincidences.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I have no doubt that Trump is going to attempt to retaliate against the Wall Street Journal. I would be shocked if the Wall Street Journal didn't expect to be sued by Trump, and they published the story anyway. And I got to give them a lot of credit for doing that, because we've seen so many media organizations essentially fold under pressure from Donald Trump. And that's not the case with the Wall Street Journal, at least in this context. So we'll see what the aftermath of this story will be, but doesn't look good for Trump. All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about foreign policy and what the latest intel indicates in regard to the destruction of Iran's nuclear sites. Come right back.
They knew and they let it happen.
I went to Kentucky Fried Chicken when I first got my license, like 17 years old or 17, 18, whatever it was. And I'm driving, I think my dad's Oldsmobile. And I parked it in a place where there was two cars next to me, really tight spot, and a car behind me. I don't even know how I got in there because I'm a terrible driver. Back then I was even a worse driver. And on the roads I'm okay, but in parking spots, I have terrible spatial reasoning and I'm a mess. And on my way out, I hit all three cars at once. I broke all records, okay? So I went, as I'm backing out, I went boom, oh and this side hit that car, this side hit this car, and the back hit the third car, okay? And I got stuck. I didn't know how to get out. Like, I went, okay, for this, and then I'm like, no, and then, right? And then finally I had to stop, go inside the KFC and go, A, I'm sorry, I hit a bunch of your cars. They're like, what do you mean a bunch of your cars? I'm like, I don't know.
Wow, there's a B?
Yeah, I'm like, I hit 3 cars. I don't know, so you guys gotta come help me, okay? Okay, so 1, my bad, really sorry about that. Yeah. Okay, number 2, can someone take my car out? Because I don't wanna keep hitting your cars, and I'm incapable of taking it out of this spot.
Now baby, move that fat, baby, move that fat. We thugged out.
Hi, I'm Brett Ehrlich with Breaking News with Brett Ehrlich. This is Breaking News with Brett Ehrlich. Hi, Brett Ehrlich here. According to EPA head Scott Pruitt, climate change is not happening. He cited a meme on Facebook he saw. When pressed to back up this source, he said it must be accurate because the watermark said it was made by a scientist. So, your move, Truth.
At TYT, our mission is to boldly pursue truth, challenge the establishment, and drive positive change. At a time when corporate capture of our media, our government, and our politics is nearly absolute, everyday working people need a champion to fight for them and to push back against the powerful interests that threaten our democracy itself. At TYT, we're proudly progressive and call out corruption and duplicity wherever we see it, from Republicans, Democrats, or anyone else. And unlike mainstream news media outlets, we're not beholden to corporate advertisers, to defense contractors, to Wall Street, or to big pharma. We only have to answer to our audience, and for nearly 2 decades, we've accomplished that by delivering honest, timely, and insightful perspectives on the day's news without fear or favor or concern for whose toes we might step on or which powerful elites we might offend. And while we're super serious about the news, we also manage to do it in a way that is fun and lighthearted. We can do this together and serve our audience, and yes, have fun doing it.
You are the media revolution. You are much needed.
TYT, TYT.
The place is like 95% TYT on.
You guys, the Young Turks, which is my favorite channel, we're getting that message out.
Frank and the Young Turks do an extraordinarily good job.
No matter what mainstream media says, you have to listen to the Young Turks.
All the people who support us on the internet, that's what gives us strength. That's what allows anyone who was in there who was undecided to think one side seems to be winning, they seem to have a bigger army. There might be a reason for that. So thank you guys.
I seen it, seen me, see it.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. More news.
Well, we have yet another round of US intel as it pertains to Iran's nuclear sites. Let's share the details.
The assessment finds that nuclear enrichment could resume in the next several months if Iran wants it to. This is according to officials familiar with this report. They also tell NBC News if this evaluation continues to be true and Iran doesn't agree to restart negotiations with the Trump administration on a nuclear deal, both the American and Israeli governments could conduct additional strikes.
And you should probably expect the additional strikes to happen sometime in the future because a recent US intel assessment of the damage done to Iran's nuclear sites alleges that only one of the sites, the Fordo site, was mostly destroyed while the other 2 sites are just not destroyed, they're damaged, but damaged to a point where maybe in the next several months, Iran would be able to continue enriching uranium. Now, US officials believe the attack on Fordo, which has long been viewed as a critical component of Iran's nuclear ambitions, was successful in setting back Iranian enrichment capabilities at that site by as much as 2 years. And that's according to 2 of the current officials in the Trump administration who spoke to NBC News on the condition of anonymity. And I do want to just quickly emphasize that. Apparently 5 current and former US officials familiar with this assessment spoke to NBC News, obviously on condition of anonymity. It's again very reminiscent of like New York Times reporting in the lead up to the Iraq War, where the intel community was essentially, feeding stories to the Times and they were just regurgitating it. So obviously proceed with caution when it comes to these types of reports, but nonetheless, previously experts had argued that, the only way to really assess accurately how much damage was done to these nuclear sites would be to have inspectors see the sites on the ground, examine the sites and see how much damage was really caused. And Iran is no longer allowing international inspectors into the country as a result of Trump's decision to pretend like he was going to negotiate a new nuclear deal with Iran, and then he immediately bombed 3 nuclear sites. Even more concerning is that according to a current US official and 2 former US officials who spoke to NBC, US Central Command had developed a much more comprehensive plan to strike Iran that would have involved hitting 3 additional sites in an operation that would have stretched for several weeks instead of a single night. Under the plan, the United States would have hit 6 sites repeatedly to essentially, in their minds, completely end this nuclear program in Iran. Now, Iran's air defense and ballistic missiles capabilities would also be struck. But what's really interesting is this intel assessment notes that Iran's ballistic missile capabilities and air defense has been decimated as a result of the 12-day war. So there's like conflicting intel coming out, which I find fascinating. And by the way, this plan by US Central Command in hitting 6 sites as opposed to 3 would have resulted in a high number of Iranian casualties. But luckily, President Donald Trump was briefed on that plan, but it was rejected because it was at odds with his foreign policy instincts to extract the United States from conflicts abroad, not dig deeper into them, as well as the possibility of a high number of casualties on both sides, one of the current officials and one of the former officials said. Now, one of the sources with knowledge of the plan also told NBC News, quote, "We were willing to go all the way in our options, but the president did not want to." Now, the Trump administration, by the way, still insists that Iran's nuclear program has been obliterated. Okay, so in a statement, Chief Pentagon spokesman Sean Purnell said this in regard to the latest assessment and the latest reporting. "The credibility of the fake news media is similar to that of the current state of the Iranian nuclear facilities, destroyed in the dirt, and will take years to recover. President Trump was clear, and the American people understand. Iran's nuclear facilities in Fordo, Isfahan, and Natanz were completely and totally obliterated. There is no doubt about that." And look, I just want to say, to me, those kinds of statements coming out of the Trump administration gives me a sliver of hope that we might be able to avoid further war with Iran. But I've had that hope with Trump before, and he has been a disappointment. So I don't know. We're gonna have to wait and see. And for those hoping to avoid war with Iran, you shouldn't rest easy just yet. There have been discussions within both the American and Israeli governments about whether additional strikes on the 2 less damaged facilities could be necessary if Iran does not agree to restart negotiations with the Trump administration on a nuclear deal, or if there are signs Iran is trying to rebuild at those locations. And I just look, there's again a lot of pressure for the administration to go to war with Iran on behalf of Israel. We know that it's not really about the nuclear sites for Israel. They want regime change in Iran, and they haven't gotten it yet. Trump has reneged on other promises as it pertains to Israel. So I don't know. We're gonna have to wait and see, but it makes my stomach hurt. I feel like we're gonna probably bomb Iran again, and I think it would be a mistake.
Yeah, so when analyzing this, you have to look at 2 things. 1, is this reporting true? 2, what is the agenda of the sources? That's actually super important. There's a lot of tells in here that I'm gonna tell you about that gives you a sense of why the sources are telling NBC News this. And there's an interesting part about Biden in here as well. So first off, is it true? Well, there's no way of knowing, guys. Within the intelligence communities, there'll be reports that say, hey, we did a lot of damage. There'll be some reports saying we didn't do enough damage, because they're getting information from different sources. So you could then cherry pick. So if you don't want to go to war, you can say, hey, we got a source saying we totally obliterated the place, right? And then you can say, but if you want to go to war, you can find some people and then leak it to the press, say, oh, it turns out we didn't get everything. Now, does that mean we definitely didn't get everything? I don't know. Does it mean we did get everything and I'm sure of it? No, I don't know. There's no way, I'm not down in those tunnels. How would I know, right? And do I trust these sources? Absolutely not. So for reasons that I'm going to explain in a second. But so to the point that Anna made about the real agenda here, look, if it was true that Israel was actually concerned about their nuclear program, then why have they been saying, since Netanyahu himself been saying since 1995 that they're about to get nukes any second now? Well, that's been a lie for decade after decade after decade, 30 years of that lie, right? And there's more of that lie in this story, yet somehow they never got anywhere near it, right? So that's not what it's about. There's two things that Israel cares about. One is making sure that no one in the Middle East can oppose them. So that's why they've now obliterated, and look, people will say, well, of course they're supposed to obliterate Hezbollah and Hamas, and those folks fire rockets into Israel, etc. Now, going into Lebanon is sovereign country, but Israel doesn't care about sovereignty at all. Israel doesn't follow international law. So they're like, I don't care, I'm just going to destroy Hezbollah. And a lot of people will cheer about that. It's still destabilizing, etc. But they destroyed Hamas, they've destroyed them. They destroyed Assad's regime. Now they're bombing Syria whenever they want, including yesterday, and their capital was bombed. Why? I mean, that's a sovereign country. What do you bomb? That's an act of war. Israel's like, no, we own the Middle East. We can bomb any of your capitals at any times. And how do I know that it's that extreme? Well, after the bunker buster bombs, Netanyahu came out and said, yeah, we might have destroyed their nuclear facilities because Trump was saying we obliterated it, right? He said, but they still have ballistic missiles and we have to hit all their ballistic missiles. Everybody has ballistic missiles. So no one is allowed to have any weapons to defend their country other than the US and Israel. What kind of standard is this? That's insane. Is France allowed to have missiles? Is any country allowed to have missiles other than Israel and the US? If that's the standard, we're all gonna attack each other nonstop. There's gonna be nonstop invasions because everybody's got ballistic missiles. All right, so that's part one of what they want. The part two is regime change, because they want a regime like Jordan and Egypt that are under control. Again, there's an upside to that, because at least they have peace deals and they're not killing one another, right? But those governments do not oppose Egypt. You can't say at all, because they're not taking in the Palestinians. So that's one way that they're opposing Egypt. But overall, they're very good allies. They generally overwhelmingly agree with Israel, and you can tell because the US continues to fund Jordan and Egypt, right? So what Israel wants is all those regimes that are opposed to them neutered. Now, if you're a supporter of Israel, you can say, yeah, of course I want all of my opponents neutered. But guys, in order to do that, they keep attacking one country after another, and you can't do that. You can't say, I'm slightly worried that at a later date you might or might not attack me, so I attacked you first and I wiped you out, and then by the way, now I'm gonna come back and bomb you again and again and again, and I have the right to pick your government for you. No, you don't. No, you don't. And Israel's been doing that in the Middle East now, along with the US, for a long time. So now my skepticism about this. At the end of the article, NBC says, under the deal, Iran was a year away from obtaining enough fissile material for a nuclear bomb, referring to Obama's deal. That's not true at all, at all. Under the Obama deal, they shipped their uranium abroad. They shipped their uranium abroad, none of it was weaponized. They were about to have enough material for a bomb? That's just a flat out lie. So the source tells honestly, this is terrible reporting, terrible.
Yeah.
You don't question the source? You didn't look up whether they really had fissile material? Or are you trying to lie to your audience on purpose? Okay, and then they said, before the June airstrikes, the Iranian regime, had enough fissile material for about 9 to 10 bombs. Now they had
It's
9
ridiculous.
to 10 nukes. Come on, they didn't have a single nuke. They didn't have first of all, they don't even have the delivery mechanism. They didn't have the weapon that they could put the uranium on, and developing that weapon would take, according to experts, 1 to 2 extra years on top. Second of all, they had enriched uranium to 60%. Now we're worried about that because that's past where you use it for energy purposes. But we broke the deal. They didn't break the deal. Trump broke the deal that Obama had, which was a great deal, and said, okay, yeah, that's it. We're not living up to our end. So Iran said, okay, then we're not living up to our end, and we're gonna enrich uranium. And again, NBC frames that as Iran then flouted the rules. No, there were no rules. We broke the rules. So then they could do whatever they want because we didn't have a peace deal anymore. So no, this is, by the end, you realize the article is all about the war drums. I mean, this is a textbook article out of 2002 as mainstream media helped the administration start a war in the Middle East.
I have so much I want to say. So first of all, let me just note, in regard to Trump's thinking on foreign policy in general, he falls for tricks and games. I'll give you an example. So recently he turned on Russia and Putin specifically, okay? And also announced that we're going to provide more military support to Ukraine, which did upset his base further. I mean, they're already upset with him over the broken promises on the Epstein files, but now they're upset because Trump has basically expressed his commitment to helping Ukraine defend itself with more military weaponry. Now, regardless of what you think about that situation, what I found interesting about Trump's comments is he's like, I'm paraphrasing, but essentially he said, I mean, I don't understand what Putin's problem is. We talk on the phone and we have pleasant conversations. Who cares? Who cares that you're having pleasant conversations? Is that all it takes? A pleasant conversation for you to trust someone who invaded a sovereign country? Are you that gullible? That's all it takes, a friendly conversation. Anyway, so his thinking on foreign policy is just like, he's out to lunch. Let's just put it that way. The other thing is, Israel loves regime change wars and loves having the United States fight these regime change wars on their behalf. But what happens in these regime change wars, Cenk? What happens if there is a regime change in Iran and the Ayatollah and the current regime is toppled? What's the plan? Because Israel also wanted regime change in Syria, and they didn't get apparently the replacement that they desired. Because guess what? Regime change is messy, especially when you go in with really no plan in mind. So now you have ministers in Israel talking about how we need another regime change in Syria. Come on. So look, I don't think the Israeli government gives a damn about the Druze, okay? Their bombing campaign in Syria has nothing to do with protecting the Druze. And the minister who came out and vocalized his desire for regime change in Syria gave the whole game away. And we need to stop getting involved in these dumb wars which further destabilize the Middle East. And hey, UK, all of you idiot politicians in the UK who complain about migrant crises and how it impacts your country. Why do you think these migrant crises exist to begin with? You go in, you destabilize Muslim majority countries, you make it uninhabitable to live in their country, okay? And what do you think is gonna happen? You're going to have a massive influx of refugees trying to find safe haven in neighboring countries or in Western countries. So the UK goes along with what the United States does. Maybe it's about time you stop doing that. If you're worried about, too many Muslims invading your country. I'm sick of it. It's so dumb. It's like, oh, let me go around and punch people in the face and then cry when there are consequences for it.
Yeah, well, that's for sure. Let me get to the Biden part. Apparently, an all-in plan was created under Biden. And so that was going to last a couple of weeks at least 6 bombing runs to further obliterate Iran, further attack and invade Iran. Trump, to his credit, chose not to do that. I mean, so it's maybe damning with faint praise because he bombed them anyway. He did a bunker buster, but yes, it could have been worse. So that's fair. But if they go back to bombing, then it doesn't matter at all. They're going to the all-in plan anyway. And it is interesting. Now, to be fair to Biden, he didn't bomb Iran. And that's actions matter more than anything else. But they had a plan to bomb Iran. and extensively. So no matter if it was a Democrat or a Republican, the military had a plan to start a war with Iran. And eventually we did. And here we are in the middle of it. So I guess last thing is, yeah, they're prediction time, analysis time. They're gonna go back and bomb Iran. They're never gonna have, it's never gonna be enough. Like Netanyahu is so greedy for power, nothing satiates him, right? If there's a single like stone left in Iran, he's gonna be like, that's a weapon. They throw stones at us, terrorists, bomb them, bomb Syria, bomb Lebanon, bomb Gaza, bomb West Bank, wipe out 75% of Gaza. But what, oh, I'm such an innocent victim. Even now, the former prime minister, Ehud Omer, says they're taking 2 million Palestinians and bring them to a concentration camp in southern Gaza. I didn't say that. A former Israeli prime minister said that. So, okay, now, but we're gonna fund more. We're gonna give more money for war. We're gonna help them with more war. So my prediction is, nope, we're going back in. They're not satisfied. And they won't be satisfied until they have a friendly regime who says, well, of course, we should have no weapons at all. We should not be able to defend ourselves. And only Israel should have weapons. Only Israel should have might. And we'll take our marching orders from beloved Israel. Until they get that from Iran, they're gonna go bomb and bomb and bomb and bomb. It's never gonna stop.
Yeah,
again, we'll see if I'm right or wrong, right? For all the people, look, when we said about Gaza, they're going to take land. People are like, outrageous, outrageous. Now they have 75% of Gaza, and they've announced that they're never going to. They voted to never allow a Palestinian state. So what are we talking about here? Oh, Israel has a right to exist. Of course it does. Do the Palestinians have a right to exist? Israel has a right to defend itself. Does Iran have a right to defend itself? Nope. Muslims never have a right to defend themselves. They don't have a right to countries. They don't have a right to sovereignty. They don't have a right to peace. They don't have any rights at all. Only Israel and America have rights. And if you disagree, we'll bomb you, we'll kill your civilians, and call you terrorists.
I think you're being generous by saying America has rights, considering we don't even have the rights to see the documents that incriminate people in positions of power due to their relationships with Jeffrey Epstein. We don't have the right to see that, according to the former FBI director, Andrew McCabe. That's the country we live in. Anyway, we gotta take a break. When we come back, you're right, Cenk. Muslims have really suffered the brunt of this terrible foreign policy. But the next story that we cover, I think adds a little bit of credibility to my argument that if they were Christian majority countries, they might run into the same issue. So that story and more coming up, don't miss it.
Look, people who support Israel will tell you, but what do you mean? Iran is dangerous. They're so dangerous. The Palestinians are dangerous. They're so dangerous. Well, like what? They might attack another sovereign country? Like Israel just did to half a dozen of their neighbors? Right, just like that. But they don't see it. I swear to God, they don't see it at all, at all. Whenever they're attacking, they think they're doing self-defense. And they genuinely believe it. They genuinely believe it. Like, oh, and by the way, I'm talking about the people who support Israel. I'm not talking about the politicians. Netanyahu, Ben-Gvir, Smotrich don't genuinely believe anything other than taking more land, and they believe in Eretz Israel. Netanyahu said, remember Amalek. That is a reference to murdering all of your opponents, including their babies. That's the passage he's referring to. I didn't say that, Netanyahu said that. And Netanyahu also said from the river to the sea. All of them, these political leaders in Israel, are announcing their genocidal intent. Now, Israeli American Holocaust professors, etc., the most prominent rabbi in America, etc., saying stop. But nope, Netanyahu never has enough. Ben Gvir and Smotrich will, because look, what did they say? Some of these ministers say, of course it's not enough. Some of them said we want a total annihilation of Gaza. And look at what they're doing, a total annihilation of Gaza. And then their only defense left is, well, it's just a genocide, it's not a Holocaust. We didn't kill them all. We could have killed them all, but we only killed 58,000. And well, and plus the 10 to 20,000 under the rubble, plus 138,000 who've been wounded, plus wiping out 75% of the buildings, plus wiping out mosques, hospitals, schools, plus 20,000 dead kids. But if you say it, I'm offended. No, I'm offended at you stating facts. No, okay, then go ahead and be offended. I'm also offended that apparently, I grew up Muslim. I'm atheist now, but that's my background. That's my family. Those are the people I know. Those are all my relatives. Am I allowed to say their lives matter too? Or only Israelis allowed to be offended? Am I allowed to be offended by 20,000 dead kids? Am I allowed to be offended by that? Or do I have to say, yes, Israel, thank you very much, sir. I wouldn't want to offend you. Go ahead and kill 30,000 Muslim kids, 40,000 Muslim kids. When is it enough? When is it enough? But don't worry, they're also killing Christians. That's coming up next. Oh, you can't say that. No, I can say that because it actually happened. They're actually doing it. And if you're running cover for it, please. Look, people mean well, but the bias is so overwhelming. No, and I know because I'm Turkish, I come from the old world. You ask a Turk about Turks, no, we're innocent, we're awesome, we're the greatest, we've never committed a genocide, we've never done anything wrong, we're the most moral people on earth. Come on, guys. All of the people in the world, every religion, every ethnicity, please wake up. We're all human beings. We're all human beings. There is no special magical thing about your particular race or religion. Sorry, I know you want it to be magical. But it isn't. We're the same species. Stop killing each other because, that one's called something else. Another one's called another one. But I'm allowed to kill you, but you're not allowed to kill me. I'm sick of it. All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, and Joaquin. Joaquin, thank you for hitting the join button below. We appreciate it. All right, Anna.
Well, there's a pretty big story out of Gaza today. I wanted to spend some time on it because oftentimes when you hear about attacks from the IDF, it's on refugee camps or Palestinian hospitals or universities. In this case, we're talking about a church.
The artillery strike on the Holy Family Church in Gaza City confirms the worst nightmares of the small Catholic community still living in the Holy Land. This video recorded a few days ago gives some idea of what it's like to live under the daily threat of being bombed. The Latin Patriarchate of Jerusalem confirms the death of 2 people as being killed. Several others have been wounded, including the parish priest.
Well, the death toll has tragically risen to 3 who have been confirmed dead, meaning that 3 people were killed and 10 others injured as a result of an Israeli strike on the one and only Catholic church in the Gaza Strip. And the religious complex has also been extensively damaged as a result of this attack. Now, here's what we know about the attack. Here are the details. Caritas, which is a Catholic charity that runs mental health services at this church, said that the church's roof was hit by a shell at around 10:10 a.m. local time. The attack ended up scattering shrapnel across the courtyard below, which severely wounded 2 elderly women who were sitting inside of a Caritas tent. Now, it's those two women who were initially confirmed as dead as a result of this attack. And then later, another individual was confirmed as dead. Now, the church's Reverend, Gabriel Romanelli, is among the injured. So I just want to show you this post on X where you can see Romanelli on the right-hand side. Luckily, there were minor injuries and he's expected to recover. But the two women, the elderly women who were struck by shrapnel and died were Fumia Ayad and Saad Isa Salama. As the shelling and Israeli military operations picked up in the area over the past week, Romanelli had urged people sheltering at the church to stay inside. If most hadn't heeded that warning, the casualty count Thursday could have been much higher. And luckily, it's more people didn't die, but why did this attack happen? Why do you need to attack the one and only Catholic Church that's sheltering, hundreds of people who have been displaced? Now, the victims were Orthodox Christians, but they happened to be sheltering at that church. Now, according to the Catholic press agency, SIR, the Holy Family Church is currently hosting around 500 displaced people. And for the IDF, what are they claiming? Well, they say that the incident is under review and that they get a load of this, every feasible effort to mitigate harm to civilians and civilian structures.
Come on.
Gaza's been razed. The thing that is especially infuriating is the gaslighting and just the brazen lies. At this point, they're just trolling us. We've all seen the images of what Gaza looks like. How are you gonna make the argument that they go to great lengths to avoid? Look at this, that's Gaza. You're looking at the images right now. Okay, the IDF is trolling you. They're laughing in your freaking face right now. Cardinal Pier Battista Pizzaballa, who's Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem, spoke to Vatican News about this attack and said, quote, "What we know for sure is that a tank, the IDF says by mistake, but we are not sure about this. They hit the church directly, the Church of the Holy Family, the Latin Church. There are 4 people seriously wounded. Among these 4, 2 are in very dramatic conditions and their lives are in serious danger." Also, an aid worker in contact with the Holy Family Parish said they had provided the GPS coordinates for the entire church compound to the Israeli military earlier in the year, as if that makes any difference at all. Because guess what? This isn't the first time a church was attacked by the IDF. Take a look.
A frantic search through the rubble in the compound of one of the world's oldest churches. Hundreds of Palestinians displaced by the war had been sheltering there. The Church of St. Porphyrius has a history dating back 1,600 years. Located in Gaza's old city, it's only a couple of hundred meters away from Gaza's Baptist Hospital, which suffered a separate strike just days ago, killing hundreds.
We've seen a history of the Israeli government, targeting mosques, targeting churches, and in the West Bank included. The Nativity Church in Bethlehem was attacked in 2002 during the second uprising.
So the video you just watched was from October 20th of 2023. And so the church that they were referring to was not a Catholic church. But the story that broke today was about the only Catholic church in Gaza that was attacked by the IDF. In addition to that, after an Israeli sniper killed 2 women who had taken shelter at the Holy Family Church in December of 2023, 2 months into the war, Pope Francis called Israel's actions in Gaza terrorism. 7 other people were injured in the shooting on the parish complex.
Yeah, so the Pope Francis used to call Romanelli every night, and sometimes they would actually talk for hours, which is amazing. So Pope Francis was in a lot of ways an amazing person. So every night he called out church in Gaza to make sure they were all right. So they give as Anna pointed out to you, they give the coordinates of the church. They say, make sure you don't bomb here. Israel goes, oh, don't worry, we're not gonna bomb there. And then they bring in a tank, they aim it at the church, and they fire away. oh, we are looking into it. They've said that now thousands of times since they started obliterating Gaza. How many have I heard back that they looked into and punished someone? I've literally heard of 0 cases of people being punished. Their kangaroo courts that they have inside the occupied territories, 99% of the time they acquit Israelis, whether they're Israeli settlers who murdered Palestinians or they're IDF soldiers who murdered innocent Palestinians. Acquitted, acquitted, acquitted. They have real courts inside Israel, right? But in the camps that they keep in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, where you have no rights and you're not allowed any kind of humanity or decency or justice, if an Israeli kills a Palestinian, they will almost always get away with it. So when they say they're looking into it, it's a joke, it's a sick joke. So nothing will come of it. The only reason why we're even having this conversation and Israel's being a little bit more careful about this story is because it's Christians that are involved. And so this Catholic Church, by the way, I mean, this is what like Christianity is supposed to be like. And this is the best side of Christianity. They provide shelter for the people who need it, because otherwise they're gonna get killed by the Israeli bombs. And Israel's like, nah, we don't care. You're giving them shelter, we're gonna bomb you anyway, right? What's the purpose of bombing a church? What's the purpose? But do you know they're paying American mercenaries $1,500 for every house they destroy in Gaza? But those houses are empty. They're not even making the excuse anymore of, oh, we were trying to look for Hamas. No, they're like, go wipe them all out so that we can come in and go, oh, there's nothing here. I guess we got to move the Palestinians. Oh, is that ethnic cleansing? Oh, we were doing it for self-defense. Were you? Well, then why are you bulldozing the homes? Why are you firing at churches? Oh, that was just a mistake. Was it? Because you keep firing into churches all the time and you wiped out like almost all the mosques, almost all the hospitals. Remember that one time, Anna's pointed this out a couple of times? It was not Israel that hit that hospital. How dare you say that we would ever hit a hospital in the beginning of the war? Now they've obliterated almost all the hospitals in Gaza. Obliterated them. Because this is a genocide and it's not close. I mean, this is one of the craziest things I've ever seen. So God bless the Catholics, because they're taking in everybody, including the Greek Orthodox women who were killed there, taking in all sorts of Christians. So here, we've got a poll question for you guys in the live chat. Shows live 6 o'clock every day, check it out, and be part of it. So will this change how any religious conservatives think about Israel, yes or no? And so now normally I'd say with you guys, 81% no, because nothing ever changes, right? They came up with this total fictional end times theology. I mean, Israel like won the lottery with this theology. Some lunatics in the 1970s in America just made up things that are not in the Bible. And they say, oh, Jesus is gonna come back. But before Jesus comes back, you have to have Israel, and Israel has to be larger, it has to be greater Israel, it has to take over more Muslim land, it has to destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Otherwise, Jesus doesn't return. So Israel better do all this. So all the Christians in America are like, oh, Israel, destroy the Muslims, Israel. Not all the Christians, the ludicrous evangelical Christians who believe this stuff. There's overwhelming majority of Christians in this country, just like every other religion, just like Jews, Muslims, Buddhists, everyone are good people trying to do the right things, like the beautiful people inside this church, right? So, but they convince them. But these days, it's starting to break down. Like Thomas Massey going, wait, I thought we were pro-life. Why are we paying for killing 20,000 Gazan children? What are we doing here? Why are we funding them? And now a lot of different Christian leaders, Massey's a politician, but some Christian leaders, some politicians, some pro-life figures coming out and going, what part of killing 20,000 children is pro-life? And you missed every time? You missed every time. You can blow up pagers, you could do the most sophisticated attacks. You knew exactly where Hezbollah was, you knew exactly where the Iranian politicians were, scientists were, diplomats were, the most sophisticated intelligence agency in the world. But golly gee, we missed 20,000 times. Oh golly gee, did we purposely destroy all of your buildings and your places of worship and your hospitals? They're doing it on purpose. If you can't see that, you're just totally blind, 100% blind. And when you kill civilians on purpose, there's a name for that. Pope Francis was right. It's called terrorism. And Israel, it's heartbreaking, but at this point, it's clearly a terrorist state. It's not close. Hamas killed 815 civilians. We condemn it with all of our fiber, right? Poor kids that didn't have anything to do with it. 36 kids. 36 kids, 20,000 kids. 815 dead, 58,000 dead. 815 civilians killed overall. Now 870 kids under the age of 1 killed by Israel. But then they say, no, you're not allowed to say that because that's a trope. But it's not a trope when you actually do it and it's a fact. It doesn't, and by the way, this is, as we say 100 times over, maybe 1,000 times at this point. This isn't about Jews. They call themselves the Jewish state and they think, well, I get to hide behind Jewish people all across the world and say, if you criticize this particular right-wing government, you're offending all Jews. No, the Jews didn't vote for this. Jews across the world have nothing to do with Israel. Jewish Americans here are Americans. Don't put it on them, and by the way, don't put them in danger by saying, no, we're doing this on behalf of the Jewish state. That makes it 1,000 times worse. But it doesn't matter, because there's nothing you could say to this vicious right-wing government of Israel that they'll ever listen to. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And right now, because America has given them a green light and a blank check, they have absolute power, and this is what they're doing with it.
Just want the killing to stop, and it's not going to. It's just going to continue with the support of our resources, our bombs, and it's deeply shameful. It's the injustice is overwhelming. Anyway, we got to take our final break. We'll be right back.
All right, back on TYT. First of all, guys, a couple of things. Check out shoptyt.com if you can. We've got all sorts of Young Turks shirts there. Wear the colors proud. And these days, I get tons and tons of stories. We got the Look Up shirt there. We got the new Gladiator logo. We got Young Turks shirts, Operation Joy shirts, Operation Hope shirts, etc. When I'm getting nonstop stories of people saying, hey, I was in a TYT shirt, somebody else came up to me, now we're friends, we watched the show, whether they watch the show together or not, some do, they're now friends in their local towns and communities and stuff, and I love to hear that. If you wanna keep up with the show, super easy, just ring the bell. That's right underneath the video as well. That doesn't cost you anything, it costs you about a second and a half to subscribe there, that's free. And then make sure you're checking out our podcasting network, and you can get all of our shows on there. So, where we get your podcasts, or just go to tyt.com/podcasts. Okay, let's go to our members on tyt.com. Bloated Ego says, since all they want is the land, if you're on that land, you're a target no matter who you are. It's super unfortunate, but yes. So don't tell me they don't want the land when they voted to take the land, and they're now calling it a conquest of Gaza. There's one easy way to prove it wasn't about the land. Get the hell out. You already killed everybody, all of Hamas's leaders. You killed all of Hezbollah's leaders. You killed almost all the leaders of Iran except the Ayatollah. How many more people do you have to kill? And every time you kill more children, you get more Hamas, not less Hamas. Now it's, okay, they can prove me wrong tomorrow. I would love it if they proved me wrong, but they won't. They'll take more land and more land while they claim to be doing self-defense. October 7th was literally 2 years ago. What are we talking about? Hamas hasn't fired, to my knowledge, I haven't heard of a Hamas rocket in forever. Why? Because they're obliterated. And now they're taking the land. Art Guy says Israel's war plan involves keeping Bibi out of prison. That's it. That's a part of it. There's the lunatic religious zealots also just want the land, so their interests coincide. But yes, it is a small number of people in the Israeli government that are driving this ship, and they're driving it right into an iceberg. Post-traumatic South disorder says, no, Iran is 17 minutes from a nuclear bomb. Bibi told me. Yeah, and by the way, he told you in the 1990s, in the 2000s, the 2010s, the 2020s, etc. Now, let's go to Box. I'm reading these blind on YouTube member section. No one ever talks about how dangerous nuclear energy when it's Iran doing it. But if we want it here in America, people freak out. Why can't they just use solar and windmills like we have to? By the way, yeah, so if Iran had a nuke, it would be the most dangerous thing in the world. We can't have anyone in the Middle East with a nuke. Oh, right, Israel already has it. Oh, but they would never use it because they're not the most paranoid nation on earth. And they didn't just attack a half a dozen of their neighbors. No, they're the most aggressive military in the Middle East by an order of magnitude. But so they can have nukes, but no one else can have nukes. Look, I don't want anybody having nukes. I don't want Israel having it. Definitely don't want Iran having it. I don't want Saudi Arabia having it. But this absurd standard, we're allowed to have nukes, but you're not. And if you try to have a nuke, we can bomb you. But wait, when India was developing their nukes, did we have a right to randomly attack India? And I guess if India was perceived to be a 1% threat to Israel, they would have said, yeah, of course, we can obliterate India. They're not allowed to have it. We'll be back. Back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, and Phil Abi-Najm. Phil, thanks for joining, brother. I appreciate it. Everybody hit the join button if you can. Be part of this community, be part of the show, and get all of our programming whenever you want as well. All right, Casper.
All right, let's go right to our next story.
We're here today because we believe that America's destiny is to dominate every industry and be the first in every technology. And that includes being the world's #1 superpower in artificial intelligence. And we are way ahead of China, I have to say.
You identified that there was a couple of threats to our country. One was Iran having a nuclear weapon. The other was losing the AI arms race to China. You took care of one of those a few weeks ago. You're helping to take care of the other one here.
Is he though? Is he? Because Trump, once again, has decided to do a complete 180 on a previous policy, this time with regard to chip company Nvidia's ability to do business with China. Now, despite lots of tough talk about beating China in the artificial intelligence war, it took just one meeting with Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang to essentially reverse course and allow the $4 trillion company to sell their H2O chips to China. Amazing. I wonder what they were talking about during that one meeting. Now, first of all, what exactly is the H2O chip? What is this all about? Well, the H2O graphics processing unit, or GPU, is an advanced AI chip, the type of device used to build and update a range of AI systems. The H2O chip was developed to specifically comply with US restrictions for exports of AI chips to China. Nvidia's most advanced chips, which carry more computing power, are off limits to the Chinese market. Now, in April, the Trump administration announced that it would even restrict the sale of Nvidia's H2O chips to China, citing national security concerns. I mean, it is amazing, right? You hear about how China is such an adversary. We're so afraid of China beating us when it comes to these technological advances. And at the time, Nvidia said that these tighter export controls would cost the company an extra $5.5 billion. And the CEO, Wang, and other technology leaders have been lobbying Trump to reverse the restrictions since. Now, recently, Wang met with Trump and made the case that Nvidia should be allowed to continue doing business with China, quote, so American companies can dominate AI instead of Chinese companies, such as Huawei, according to the Associated Press. I really fail to understand how selling this technology to China means that we're going to dominate China in the technology, especially when the other narrative that we hear about China quite often is how they steal our IP, how they're really hurting American businesses through that theft of intellectual property. Now, his lobbying has definitely paid off, because after their meeting, that's when Trump did his 180. Wang says that Trump assured him that Nvidia would be allowed to sell their chips to China as soon as licenses are granted by the Commerce Department. And the news came during Wang's visit to Beijing, during which he told reporters, quote, I'm very happy. I'm sure you are. And then immediately following that announcement, shares in Nvidia rose more than 4%. Which we should all expect, because obviously allowing Nvidia to sell these chips to China means that they can increase their profits. Now, all sorts of people are defending Trump in making this decision. notably individuals who stand to benefit from the ability to sell AI technology to or chips to China. One of them, of course, being David Sachs, again, who stands to benefit from this new development. And unsurprisingly, you also have Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent defending the change in policy, saying that Trump's decision to lift restrictions on Nvidia was linked to the rare earths deal made with China. So let's just take a quick look at that video and then I'll go to you, Cenk.
This is the same chip, though, that the Trump administration blocked with export controls in April. So why the change in policy now?
Anne-Marie, you might say that that was a negotiating chip that we used in Geneva and in London.
So this was part of the trade talks when it comes to Washington and Beijing?
Yes.
Was it a quid pro quo then? As you said, it wasn't, but was it potentially to make sure that you can get the licenses when it comes to rare earths?
Yeah, I think it was all part of a mosaic. They had things we wanted, we had things they wanted, and we're in a very good place.
I mean, you can just answer simply, it's corruption, okay? It's corruption. So you can't on one hand talk about the threat that China poses to the United States, and then at the same time, do business with them and pass along and sell all sorts of technology to them. So what do you think, Cenk? Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, so if they did not fearmonger about China and they didn't tell us how they were such a big threat, et cetera, and they just made a simple deal, they say, okay, we'll give you these AI chips, you give us the rare earth minerals, I'd say, okay, ho-hum. But when you tell us China's a big threat, we can't give them sensitive technology, oh my God, oh wait. And then you think it's just about the deal? No, Nvidia is now one of the most, financially lucrative companies in the world, one of the wealthiest companies in the world, one of the most powerful companies in the world. You think that they had no effect on this? No, corporations have massive effect on any trade deal that we do. And then finally, you're telling me that TikTok is such a big danger from China. Oh my God, what if they get our videos, or they find out about your TikTok account? Meanwhile, we're sending them the most sophisticated AI chips there are, because people are making a lot of money that are connected to the Trump administration. Nothing but hypocrisy.
Yep. All right, that does it for the main show. We're gonna head on over to the bonus episode, which is gonna be super lit today. And I'm not joking, okay? We're gonna talk about this explosive interview between Joy Reid and Piers Morgan. We're also gonna talk about a couple that got caught cheating on the jumbotron. Oh, it's such a good post game. I can't wait. Bonus episode, tyt.com/join to become a member. We'll see you there.